Hello everyone. This is the second part of our of our series. So now we are gonna talk about Unity software. Um, I mean, let's just start with the with what this company does. Unity is a game engine. Unity is the most used commercial game engine out there, and 70% or more of mobile games are made with Unity. Very decent amount of PC games are built with Unity, and I think more than 70% of VR applications are made with Unity. So this is a very popular game engine. Um, People make the games on Unity's engine itself, and then publish those games, but those games still run on Unity runtime, and then they monetize the games using Unity ads or and use other products of Unity like analytics and maybe other solutions that Unity is offering. So this is a pretty entrenched company um, in mobile and PC and other platforms. In broader game development, they're pretty entrenched. Um, and this is the only company that both like obviously in gaming offers the creation solution and monetization tools, advertising platform. So as you can imagine, that's actually pretty unique, um, because they have a closer relationship with the advertisers, with the majority of the advertisers. Um, so that's Unity, and if you look at the chart, you can see that the stock went down quite quite rapidly after following the SaaS apocalypse. Um, the sentiment has changed from okay, Unity is a Unity will benefit from artificial intelligence to AI will replace Unity, and it's been climbing back up after they released early Q1 results. They released Q1 results early because the stock was going down, and the results were pretty decent. So I guess they wanted to just release them early. Also, they declared that they are looking to divest Supersonic and close down Iron Source. Um, so that's Unity. Now I want to get to financials of this company. So from if you so as an investor, researching businesses, like what is the first thing that you see here? The first thing that you see obviously is the fact that their EPS is negative by a quite decent margin, you know, -1 trailing 12 month EPS. Therefore, we don't have a price earnings ratio. Um, and yeah, I mean that's it. And if you look at their valuation, it's $12 billion. Um, their revenue is $500 million per quarter, so their price to sales ratio is around 6. Uh, Now, when you see that, you obviously have concerns, like, is this okay? This is a business that is not profitable. That thing alone, like, is enough to scare off like many investors. And then the other thing is, I mean, the chart again. The chart looks terrible. That's the other thing. But then when an outsider looks at this, when they see that their revenue has not been growing, you know, that much, they again completely avoid this company. Um, Unity used to report $600 million in revenue, um, at least as high as 600 million they reported 2 years ago. Now they're reporting $500 million. So when people see this, they think that this company is not growing and they're not profitable, and they might have heard of the runtime fee crisis. Now, on top of that, we had this, genie thing, and software businesses getting replaced by artificial intelligence. So we have all this combined that makes people avoid Unity completely. At least retail investors, but I believe, even institutional investors, as you can guess, looking at this, chart and valuation, are probably avoiding Unity to an extent. Um, so that's the problem, right? I mean, people are avoiding Unity because of the things that I've listed, but the thing is, none of those things are accurate, and there is you need to understand the background story to assess this, business. Why is that? So let's look at the latest earnings report, Q4 2025 earnings report. Um, you can see that I mean, yeah, the revenue has grown quite a bit compared to last year. Um, when you look at net income, you can see, net income has improved, right? But it's still terrible. 87 million dollars net loss. A net loss of $87 million is just terrible for such business, especially combining those things, the future of Unity being unclear and this company being a terrible business. There's no way they compete with Applovin. There's no way they succeed in anything. So when you combine those things and some of the maybe analyst narratives, like, um, Unity does not have a potential way to monetize its engine. A seed-based model is quite bad, right? So when you combine all these things, it's understandable that you avoid investing in Unity. But here's the thing: looking at um, looking at the details, what we will see is that, um, let me just okay. So okay, we have a net loss of 89 million, right? But have a look at this. Amortization expense was $121 million. That's a that's a that's called dilutive, but that's that's amortization from prior acquisitions. They have acquired Iron Source, they have acquired Ziva Dynamics, they have acquired quite some, you know businesses. Um, those were terrible decisions, but they did, and now they have this burden of, they need to put those numbers in their earnings. They have this schedule. They need to, yeah, I mean, factor them into their earnings and gap numbers. But this number will decay over time. So this is not a, real expense. This is just amortization. Depreciation is quite low. So when you add amortization to this, and especially when you compare it to last year, like amortization expense, probably because of the schedule, have gone up. So they're from 88 million to 120 million, right? And yet, you know, their net loss still improved, and stock-based compensation went down from 110 million to 92 million. So stock-based compensation going down, and when you look at it, the background, you see that this company is actually profitable. They have become profitable, at least in the last year, from cost cutting and other things. So when you add this amortization back to, the gap net loss, you get a decent amount of profit, right? Um, so what this means is, when in a year from now, or a year or two, when this amortization decays over time, uh, you know this Unity will actually report a net profit, without assuming that their financials improve from this point forward. So that alone, this thing that I told you alone, is enough to argue against many of the people looking at Unity software and saying, okay, Unity is not profitable, let's just completely avoid it, right? It's enough to argue with those people, and it's enough to argue with the people who say that Unity is not growing. Unity has been growing, not just their revenue. They have also um, decreased their expenses by quite a lot. Um, so as you can see, the amortization expense actually has been weighing on R&D expense in the in the income statement. So yeah, without this increase in amortization, they have actually R&D expenses has been actually flat, significantly flat, even though they're heavily investing in their new product Vector, which is a completely new technology. Um, so R&D flat, even though they're investing heavily in Vector and other things, and other expenses have gone down slightly. So yeah, I mean, expenses going down, revenue starting to increase again. So the company is growing. At least the company has just started growing. Um, Now those are very significant things, right? That's one thing. Now just for further clarification, you can look at the earnings report of a company like Roblox, and what you will see is that depreciation and amortization is not 120 million, and in fact it's 61 million. And I believe probably like half of this is probably depreciation, but I'm not sure. But again, I mean, so 120 million is quite high, and that's why Unity seems unprofitable. Um, so just keeping that in mind. Now, here's the other question that people are saying, the bears are saying, or maybe people are saying, they're claiming that Unity has fake growth. Why? They argue that, okay, Unity has been deprecating iron source, so they argue that the management is saying that Vector is growing, but in reality, what's happening is they are telling people who used to spend on iron source to spend in Unity Vector. Um, that could be true, right? I mean, because logically thinking, when you think about it, like iron source was a $50 million per quarter business. Now they're deprecating it. So when you consider that they might have been using Unity ads instead, then yeah, I mean, that could be true. But in reality, again, when we look at their latest investor update, they actually released the numbers. So have a look at this, right? Total grow revenue has been going up. So this alone is enough to say that, okay, the growth has been beyond the scope of iron source. Iron source. Um, but the other thing is, I mean, when you look at the details, um, look, for example, here, I mean, iron source's revenue actually went up, but Unity Vector also went up by quite a lot. And then here, I mean, you can look at the numbers. It's quite obvious from this alone is that, okay, it's not iron source. It's not coming from iron source. But yeah, I mean, it's Vector growing. They have also told this in um, uh, on their earnings call. They said most of this revenue growth is coming from incremental spend, not iron source. So okay, we have destroyed the argument of Unity being unprofitable. We have destroyed the argument of Unity not growing, and we have destroyed the argument of Unity Vector not growing. All great. So this is significant. You because you might say that okay, it might be true, but what makes you think that this is you know weighing on the share price? Well, what makes you think that this is the reason why share price is not going up? That would be true. I mean, I don't know. I can't be. I'm not certain, but what I'm saying is that from my I've been looking at um, the arguments on the internet, and that's what I saw. People saying Unity is not profitable, people saying this and that. So I just wanted to talk about it. Now, um, this is a gaming advertising ad revenue share by ad network. This is a Tangent research. So from this research, what we see, I don't know how accurate this is, but um, compared to last year, Unity ads, I mean, they actually have, yeah, I mean, Unity ads has been growing the fastest on iOS, and then on Android, you have AdMob and Pango and Liftoff. Now, I wanted to talk about the growth of Vector because many people seem to believe that it's something special. Vector growing 70% year over year. It must be that they are, um, it must be something difficult. The thing is, it's not because um, the there are many things to consider, but the first thing is if you look at the growth of Moloko or Mintegral or Liftoff, if you look at their year over year growth, you can see that they also have been growing quite rapidly. Um, they all claim to own a special Unity Vector like AI model. That's what they call, or machine learning model. And yeah, they've all been growing quite rapidly. So yeah, I mean the entire space has been growing, and from what I can see, these competing players like Unity, Liftoff, Mintegral, Applovin, have been chipping off some of Google's and Meta's, market share. Um, that's one thing. And again, broader CPM, so the cost of acquiring a user have been going up. So that's so a broad-based growth. That's one thing. And again, Unity having its new model, a completely new thing, is another thing. So it's not special 70% year over year growth when you combine it with the fact that it might have been that some of ironSource spenders might have started, might have been spending on Unity now. Yeah, I mean that's not a special amount of growth we have here. So this is the so we have discussed about the past, what happened, what it is. Now let's talk about what can happen in the future, um, because I will talk about both Unity and then the macro level. I will discuss the macro level. So in terms of Unity, they're obviously their main play is Unity Vector right now. They have other things like the engine business, which is their strategic create revenue has been growing at a rate of 14%. So purely subscriptions. Non-strategic part has been shrinking, and I think it's not no longer I mean it's almost non-existent at this point. Now that has been growing, but that's obviously not some sort of magical growth. I mean they have been increasing prices, and then yeah, I mean price increases is the main driver of that growth. Um, Now their main bet is on Unity Vector. I'm not a ad tech expert. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional, but but I believe that they can do this. I mean, I believe they can pull this off. Why is that? Because logically thinking, um, Applovin has this mediation. Applovin sees everything happening in their mediation. They have this clean data source. Plus, they had this technology. Meanwhile, Unity had did not have any technology, and in fact, Unity's playable ad performance was quite terrible before Vector and before they started focusing on this. So when you look at the history, because people are asking, if Unity was capable of doing this, why did they not do this in the past? They have been talking about this engine data for years now, which is true. They have been. If you look at the earnings calls from like 2022, I believe, and 2023, even Jean Riccitiello was talking about the engine data. Now, they did talk about the engine data back then, but you need to consider this. Back then, I mean, as you know, Applovin went down 99% in this time frame. The entire in-app advertising market was down. It was not growing. It was in shambles. So the moment Applovin started going up, and the moment the market started going up was later in 2023, 2024. And they have started, so that's why they did not invest in that, because it was useless. They were betting on the create business. I mean, you can see it yourself. I mean, they have been focusing on the create business throughout this entire time frame. So then runtime fee crisis happened, and then Unity's entire trajectory shifted. Everything changed. That's one thing. The other thing is, the broader. There have been new modeling techniques, and the infrastructure is improving, right? I mean, the artificial intelligence is improving, modeling techniques, people are are improving, technologies are improving overall. So Unity might have not been able to use this engine data as efficiently as possible in the past, just like anyone, but now they can. So that's why they did not do it in the past, and that's why they can do it now. That's one thing. Um, the the core problem again is that people do not believe that Unity can do this. People do not believe that Unity will be able to use the engine data to grow the business like at high growth rates. Um, and now with this new SaaS apocalypse thing, we have a new fear. We have AI destroying software. So uh, talking about that, now let's get to the macro level. Um, I mean, obviously, I don't trade, I don't buy and sell, I don't do any of that. I just buy and hold. But there are some things that we need to know. There are some things that we need to keep in mind if we are investing and if we are buying and holding. Because if you're not aware of those things, when you see your investment go down 60% or more in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, obviously you would get scared. You would start to question yourself. You would get shaken off. So there are things that we need to know. First one is understanding the terminal value. Terminal value is the value that investors investors are saying, okay, this company will grow for years, right? The valuation of the company is present value of all the future cash flows that the company will generate in the future. So it's not just year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, like all the way into the future. Now, obviously, you discount those free cash flows from the future. So the more you get into the future, the more discounted they are. But the terminal value is obviously that, okay, there's an extent to which you can forecast, or you do forecast, and then the terminal value is okay. Like in the long future, like what it will look like, right? Let's say that terminal value is Unity software in the very distant future. Um, Now, that is a big part of the valuation, present valuation of the company, as you can guess. So let's give an example. Tesla is trading at ridiculous valuations, but arguing against that is difficult. Why is that? Because, okay, you could say that this is not going to happen. You could argue that the expectations are not accurate, or you could say this company is expensive. But the investor of Tesla is arguing that, in 20 years, not even 20 years, like in 30 years, 40 years, there'll be robots. Tesla will be selling robots, and those robots, uh, you know, will run the world. I mean, you could say it will not. You could say it's not probable, but you can't say it's not gonna happen. You can't say for a certain that it's not gonna happen. And even if you do, I mean, it won't matter, because if they believe in that, there's no way to prove that they're not right, because it's in 40 years, 50 years, who knows what's going to happen. So that's the terminal value. I mean, they're saying that this is going to happen, so I'm buying it at this valuation. I don't care. That's the impact of terminal value. Now for Unity software, um, the the discussion is again, okay, this drop did not happen because people. I mean, there's actually, this is very complex, because from from for other people, this drop happened because, okay, Genie came out, right? This drop happened because Genie came out. Google revealed their new world model, with well, then the stock dropped. So people think, okay, this happened because of Genie. If it was purely because of Genie, then the stock would have recovered, because it's quite obvious. It's very obvious that Genie will not replace Unity or game engines, because it's not even the same thing, at least in the near future. What changed, however, is that, okay, now people are starting to assume that it's not going to be just Genie. This entire thing, in 20 years, in 30 years, we were saying, okay, Unity will stay dominant, or at least Unity have something valuable. Now it shifts from Unity either has something valuable, or you know Unity is going to zero. So there's no in between. That's why many of these software names are getting destroyed, but they're not going to, going down the shitter. Um, so it's like in between. It's either going to zero or it's going to thrive, right? Because again, AI will help game development a lot, and blah blah blah, all that, right? So that's that you can argue against that. You cannot argue against that. For that to change, there's nothing Unity can do. You need the macro environment, macro perception to adjust. Um, so so the entire discussion around is, again, I mean, as an investor, you need to keep that in mind. You can't, if you don't, the first thing is, when a stock drops like this, you might think, okay, this company is going bankrupt. This is happening. This is happening. They know for a fact. They know what they're doing, right? No, they don't. They don't know what they're doing. They're just probabilities. They're possibilities, and some people think that Unity is now, terminal value is not worth anything. That's why it goes down. But it's not certain. It's not just certain. It's very unclear. So that's one thing. The other thing is, okay, let's say we hold this business. When will the stock go back up? that's the other question, right? You're holding it. In many cases, we see that, looking at the past, the earnings can improve, the earnings can keep growing, and the company can keep growing and growing and growing, but without the macro environment improving, the stock might remain stuck. So the stock might not go up. So if you look at the past turnarounds, like many of them, like majority of them, the initial rise, the initial bull run starts with the, you know, together with the broader like macro, broader businesses, broader sectors. So, for example, for Unity to truly rise, financials are improving, but the stock is not going up. For Unity to truly go beyond and start rising again, what you need is, okay, this macro environment has to improve. So if we keep getting those stupid anthropic stories and people keep nonsense like bullshitting, and then, if IGV keeps dropping, you're not gonna get a bull run. You might get a decent, okay, maybe Unity might still recover slightly, but it's not going to be a phenomenal, bull run. Um, so those were the two things, like stock dropping, and then the condition of a bull run over the long run with a turnaround story. So knowing those things will help you a lot. At least you will not get frustrated when your stock goes down and when your stock does not go up. You need to focus again on your main thesis, the financials, and how the company is doing, and all that, right? That's the main principle. So that's that's the broader story. We can't argue against, okay, I mean, Unity being replaced or not. Now we can list the possibilities, but nobody knows. We don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? I mean, you can't really argue. You claim that you know what's going to happen in 10 years for certain. Now, everyone has their own opinions. Obviously, you invest based on those opinions and expectations. For me, I mean, I don't see AI as a credible threat to Unity, at least in the broad, let's say, closer long term. I can't say, in 20 years, in 30 years, I don't know, but in 5 years, I think AI is not a credible threat, especially Genie. Genie is not a threat to Unity. Everyone knows it. It's it's not even a game, but the idea that, you having cloud clusters, like cloud computers, running so that you play like it, so that it generates pixels in real time while you play in other place, and consumes electricity there, just for your experience, and it generates pixels like, I mean, in real time. I mean, it's not going to compete with Unity. What might compete with Unity, obviously, I had some concerns. I still continue having some concerns. It's not Godot. It's not Godot. Open source. You cannot do an open source game engine, because game engine is not just an editor. It might be for hobbyists, but for serious businesses, you need technical support. You need the engine to be efficient. You need the engine to be compatible with other operating systems and products. It really is R&D intensive. You can't have those with open source. It's not going to work. At least it might work for hobbyists, but not for serious businesses. At least, we're talking about the current short term or mid-term. Unreal Engine, again, no. Unreal Engine is not going to be the issue for Unity. Why is that? Because they're different in nature. Unreal Engine is quite heavy. Unreal Engine is focusing on visual fidelity. Now, visual fidelity, okay, sounds cool, right? Sounds, you say, improved graphics, nanite, and that and that. You can have improved graphics in Unity as well, but the thing is, everyone is compute constrained. That's one thing, but the other thing is games are about fun. Games are not about the best, like it's not porn, it's not like you don't need it to be 4K. It's just one of the things. So Unity being able to run on mobile, PC, VR more efficiently is is arguably a better situation than having the most complex graphical tools that really hurt performance. Now, Unity and Unreal Engine are different in nature. Unity will remain, and Unreal Engine will remain. So it's not a concern. And this is a duopoly, right? I mean, Unity and Unreal controlling the entire game creation space almost. That's that's a big space. More competitors could come, and Unity would still be fine because again, it's a huge space. And in fact, it's quite surprising that Unity is at a valuation of $12 billion when you consider the fact that it's literally like so crucial. Unity could if Unity said, okay, we will stop working, there's no longer Unity engine, we will go bankrupt or whatever, the entire gaming industry like goes through a shock. The entire gaming industry, especially mobile gaming, like that will be insane. So the importance of Unity is very, very high. So that is one thing, right? So you have this company that has a very significant offering. The value that they're pr- providing for their customers and for the entire industry is extremely high, and it's not able to capture that value. It's not able to monetize it. So you have 70% of mobile games being built on Unity, but Unity cannot even monetize them, like beyond just the simple seat based, seat price that they charge. While, for example, Steam charges 30% to for every game like that they sell. So they charge 30%. Google and Apple charge 30% for every in-app purchases happening in their platforms. Um, what else? I mean, yeah, you have those, and then you have the game engines, Unreal and Unity, not being able to charge significantly. Nobody's paying them, but they're the ones creating the value. They're the ones providing everything to develop that game. So that's the main issue. Now for Unreal Engine, I don't know what they do. I don't know. I don't care. They have Epic Games, but they're trying to compete with Steam. But somehow people like Steam more than Epic Game Store. So at least they seem they're unable to compete at this point. But for Unity, Unity can do a lot of things, and Unity has a clean path. Why? Because Unity has an advertising business, and Unity is dominant in mobile games space. So Unreal does not have that possibility. Unreal cannot advertise in games, cannot have offer other offerings like Unity does. So Unity has this advertising business, and this is the first time they are starting to use the engine data. The first time. Um, that is big because, again, this is the first time Applovin is getting the data for mediation. All that, they know who bids how much, so they really have the upper hand in their own mediation, plus they charge 5%. Like Unity's entire take rate is, I think, either 15 or 20%. So imagine, like, if Unity bids to show an ad in Applovin's mediation, Unity makes $15, let's say $15 from that, while Applovin makes $5 while doing nothing, right? It's purely insane. Now, that's yeah, that's a big enemy to fight. But here's the thing: this is the first time this company is executing, and the engine data is interesting because what the engine data is not some sort of imaginary like complex data, at least not at the first stage of this, of this initiative, right? They will not go for like complex, I don't know, like engagement and stuff, like what do you do in the game, like where do you go, what do you do, at least to my knowledge. But they will try to get data from all the Unity games. So like 70% or more of mobile games are on Unity, but only a small percentage, at least to my knowledge, do send Unity the, every data. Compared to Applovin, they have this mediation, they get all the data as much as they can. But if Unity can take this data, take everyone's data, obviously Unity have more data, right? I mean, they get data even from the games that do not run Unity ads. That's one thing, and the other thing is, again, the quality of this data will be higher because Applovin is getting the data from MMPs and mediation, but mediation is just the bidding part, so they're getting the main data from MMPs and yeah, I mean from MMPs, um, and SDK, but Unity again will get the data directly, like whatever they need. They just say, okay, if you're a developer, enable this, and we will get that. So you don't need to integrate, and you don't need an SDK to initialize. So that's a big thing. Uh, Again, I don't know how this ends, at least over the short term, but I remain optimistic for the longer term future. Um, so that's basically why I prefer Unity over Applovin. Now, oh, I have been talking about all this, but like imagine Applovin has a valuation of $150 billion. Like in what universe, like in what timeline, in which parallel universe you have Applovin being worth like 15 times more than Unity? 15 times more than Unity. Like the games run on Unity engine. All the Applovin games, I'm not even kidding, like every single game that runs Max is is on Unity engine. I don't think like games made with like appropriate, how do you call that, like non-commercial special engines, they do not run UA and they do not run monetization with ads. They're like, they focus on in-app purchases. So every single game is made with Unity engine. That so Applovin is literally like, if there was no Unity, there would be no Applovin. But the other way around, if there was no Applovin, Unity would thrive, right? But again, we cannot assume that okay, Unity provides the value that means Unity will succeed. No, I mean they cannot maybe they're in a situation where they're unable to monetize it, while Applovin can. So Applovin does advertising, while Unity just charges for per seat. Now, the only way for Unity out of this, which they're working on, they have started to work on, that's why it's significant, is, providing services tied to their engine. So IAP and advertising, and maybe, again, using the data in their engine. That's the only way to get money from the developers. You cannot try what the prior management team did. You can't go keep on increasing pricing and introduce new pricing. It's not gonna, I mean, it would help grow over the short term, but it's not as sustainable and not a significant growth. The only way is you somehow get this data from the Unity engine, and then you use this data to provide like analytics tools for developers, and more important things for developers, and you use it for your advertising business. So you get the data, you build an efficient platform and use it for advertising. And then IAP solution, obviously you offer like in-app purchasing tool that would avoid like Apple and Google's tax. I mean, their fees. So web shops, they're working on it. I mean, like engine native workshops, maybe they can click easily and then get their own web shop. Also, so yeah, I mean, it did like bring in different um, third party um, in-app purchasing providers, or I don't even know how to call them, but yeah, I mean, bring in Stripe, Xsola, and other players, and say, okay, we have this Unity integration, so now people can easily choose which one to use, and then we provide the background, and then you just put in, and without messing with anything else, you get it. Right? With that, you make sure that your developers will send you the IAP data, because you cannot go and ask for that, because nobody's going to share the IAP data for you to target their players who spend in the game. They would lose money for nothing, right? So you offer those things and make money from that. In short, yeah, I mean, those are the reasons why bears are not accurate, and why I think Unity will succeed in the future.